Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
It's my pleasure to be on.
Now, Dr. Shabir, can you explain why Muslims care so much about Al-Aqsa Mosque?
Well, it has a lot of significance for Muslims because this is mentioned in the Quran to begin with. In the 17th chapter of the Quran, the first verse, we read, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-harami ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwa as-sami'ul basir. Glory be to him, a reference to God, who transported his servant by night from the sacred mosque to the farthest mosque, which is the literal translation of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, to the farthest mosque, whose environs we have blessed in order to show him some of our signs. Certainly he is hearing and seeing. So there's a reference to God here, sometimes in the third person, sometimes in the first person plural. In any case, basically it's saying that God should be glorified, or God is glorified, and God is the one who transported his servant, a reference to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by night, a reference to the night journey and ascension of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So that night journey took place from one mosque to the next. The one mosque, the from mosque, is the Masjid al-Haram, that is what we know to be in Saudi Arabia today, to Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, the farthest mosque, which we recognize to be the mosque in Jerusalem.
So because of this, this is one of the reasons why Al-Aqsa is so significant, right?
Yes, and notice that it's not only the mosque itself, but around the mosque as
area,
well, because
yes.
it says we have barakna hawlahu, we have blessed that which is around it.
So would that be the Al-Aqsa compound, or would that be all of Palestine?
It's not so well defined,
Okay.
but generally Muslims think of all of Palestine as being, a blessed land. There are hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which refer more broadly to the region of what's called Sham at that time, or what we might more narrowly call Syria today, but it included that whole area. But we also have reference again in the Quran where the people who were traveling with Moses, with Musa alayhi salam, they were being told at that time, "Udkhulul ard al-muqaddasata allati kataba Allahu lakum." Enter the sacred land that God has prescribed for you. So again, it is referred to as the sacred land. So the whole land is thought from this perspective to be sacred. Now, of course, I don't want to interrupt you in case you want to ask a question.
Well, I was going to ask you about the qiblah, the direction of prayer, and I know that this was the first direction of prayer before Muslims switched to Mecca.
Yes.
And the Kaaba.
Yes, it was. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, just to get down to basics where everybody can follow us easily, was born in Mecca. And there he started out getting revelations from Allah, and the Muslim community started to pray with him. So each community, like outside of Muslims, other than Muslim communities, they had some chosen directions. Like, for example, it is known that some of our Jewish friends prayed towards the what remains of the Temple of Solomon, namely the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall. And some Christians at the time were facing east as their chosen place, direction of worship. They thought that some people thought that the east is where the light appears. So, that would be a suitable direction to turn in prayers. And for various reasons, people had various directions that they turned to in prayer. So the Muslims also wanted to have some direction of prayer. It was thought that that's something important in your prayer. Now, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it seems in the early days would naturally have not ignored the sacred temple in Mecca at the time, which we know as the Kaaba. But Martin Lings, in his biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him, suggests that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, stood to pray at the Kaaba, he would stand like to the south of the Kaaba, so that when he faced the Kaaba, he would automatically be facing also Jerusalem, which is to the north of that. when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrated away from his hometown, Mecca, to Medina, now you had to face one direction or the other. Lining up the two was no longer possible because Jerusalem was to the north of Medina, whereas Mecca was to the south. So you had to face either north or south.
Mm-hmm.
And there the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, chose to face the north, which is towards Jerusalem. So for Muslims looking at this, it is clear that Jerusalem was the first qiblah of the Muslims. And then 17 months or so after this migration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he was given a directive in the Quran to face towards Mecca instead. And so he turned towards Mecca and his followers along with him. And we are actually directed thus in the Quran, فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, turn your face towards the sacred mosque, the Masjid al-Haram, which is in Mecca. And Muslims are told in the plural, وَحَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ, wherever you happen to be, turn your faces in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So Muslims now face Mecca, but we do recall, and we do know from our history, that prior to that, we used to face Jerusalem. So it is still held in the thoughts of Muslims as the first qibla of the Muslim faith.
Mm-hmm. And many Muslims are excited to go there. I believe there's a hadith where the Prophet says, go pray there. I'm not sure how authentic the hadith is, but it says this, and I know that Muslims do travel to pray in Al-Aqsa, or they have when it has been easy.
Yes. In fact, the hadith is collected in some of our most authentic sources, like Bukhari and Muslim, saying that you're not to travel to, a journey should not be undertaken, meaning like the hardships of a journey should not be undertaken except for travel to 3 mosques. One is Al-Masjid al-Haram, which we've mentioned so many times already in Mecca. The other is to the Prophet's mosque in Medina, where he spent the last years of his life. And the third is Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, which now is the subject matter of our discussion. There is also a hadith that mentions rewards for praying in the various mosques. So the most rewarding mosque to pray in would be Al-Masjid al-Haram, which is Mecca. The second would be the Prophet's mosque in Medina. And the third would be Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. And yeah, you're right. In order to reap these benefits, the Muslims do travel to Masjid al-Aqsa. We all know it's a matter of, the ABCs of the Islamic faith, that there are 5 pillars of Islam, including the Hajj. When Muslims perform the Hajj, often they will take a route through Jerusalem in order to visit Al-Masjid al-Aqsa on the way to or back from the Hajj. And in addition to the Hajj, Muslims also perform the minor pilgrimage, which is called Umrah. And in performing that pilgrimage also, many Muslims will take a route through Jerusalem to visit Jerusalem on the way as well. In addition to that, sometimes Muslim tours are organized. And the Muslim tour will also take Muslims to Jerusalem to explore that mosque and its environments, to pray therein, and also to learn something about the history of that mosque and its region. And of course, it's a very old history for both our Jewish and Christian friends, but also for Muslims as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's understandable then that Palestinians would be concerned if security forces seem to like they're violating the sanctity of the mosque and I guess imposing limitations on their ability to worship.
Yes, and of course, not only Palestinians would be concerned about this, we're all concerned about this. Muslims the world over are concerned about it. And it's not only Muslims, but also non-Muslims. People look at this and they see that the freedom of Palestinians have been curtailed in so many different ways. And that this is one of the ways, their freedom and their right to worship in the sacred mosque. The recent attack, where the soldiers entered the mosque compound and fired, even though they're rubber-tipped bullets, but look at the number of people wounded, a couple of hundred people. Throwing the stun grenades among the worshippers, especially during the month of Ramadan. And especially during one of the most sacred times, the 27th night of Ramadan, when some 90,000 worshippers had gathered there to pray. So this, the stun grenades were lobbed there, but the world was stunned by this sort of action, which does not obviously take into consideration the heightened religious sensitivity at that place and at that particular time in the year.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.